That's when the signal shines in. Got the mic set up and the camera spin. Grab a coffee, pull up your chair, and join the drive. 'Cause the only place to be on a Monday night at 9 is right here, alive. We're drilling down deep on the legend of fur, the biggest mystery ever did stir. It's Sasquatch Watch Radio. Tune into the same with Gary Kendrick hosting with King. He's heard the howls, he's caught the form's trace, a true seeker leading the chase. Something stirs out in the shadowy wood. Let's uncover it together, just like we should. The team is geared up, the map is laid clear. We bring expert voices where the facts appear. We feature top names on this digital plane, from Meldrum's big theories to Strange Rich Strain. With Lyle Blackburn and Scott Violet online, we chase the elusive one sighting at a time. It's Sasquatch Watch Radio. Tune into the screen with Gary Kendrick, host of the scene. He's heard the howls, he's seen the dark form, a true eyewitness leading the storm. Something is lurking out in the dark wood. Let's find it together, just like we should. We give you the legends, the truth laid raw, and a unique track for the tale of the law. So subscribe to the channel, heed the lead. We're planting knowledge, pulling up the weed. Yeah, Monday night, 9 Eastern, YouTube Live. Sasquatch Watch Radio, where the quest thrives.
Hey, everybody. Tonight is Monday night, February the 23rd, 2026, and you are now watching Sasquatch Watch Radio. I'm glad to have everybody on board tonight. It's going to be a topic show. We haven't had one in a little while, and I thought this might be a good one. Tonight's title of the show is, What Should I Know About Sasquatch? And we'll just get right into it. Number one. Not everything on the internet is true. Hoaxes and outright lies and misinformation is all over the internet. And it doesn't just apply to Sasquatch. It applies to anything you want to look up. You can find anything that you want to find on the internet, true or not true. For a good example, think about all the celebrity deaths that have been hoaxed over the past few years and everything like that. So not everything that you're going to find on Sasquatch on the internet is going to be true or factual. It may be misidentification. And like I said, it could just be outright, hoaxes and lies. That's the main thing to keep in mind. Not everything that you're going to find is factual. Number two, what does Sasquatch look like? And this one, I just wanted to get into that a little bit more. Sasquatch has been described as being like an ape to a human looking, or a cross between ape and human. They're large, between 7 to 10 feet tall. There's 3 different distinctive body types that get described most often. You have the huge, muscular, like patty figure. That's the first one. Then you have more like an athletic figure, which is tall and slim, but still very muscular, kind of like a professional basketball player. And the last one is kind of gangly. They're real tall, kind of thin. And I think each one of these might actually be different stages of development. Maybe the tall and thin ones are kind of younger, and maybe the athletic ones are a little bit older, and then the really huge muscular ones are much older. So, it's all conjecture. It's all on what you think. But that is the three most common body types that get described. Hair color too is another thing in Sasquatch reports. You hear lots of different colors. I've heard reports of kind of like my own was kind of a cinnamon red color. You hear about black, kind of gray. I've even heard stories of white. I think in Texas they call them the white things. So we have lots of different color patterns. And it, kind of when I relate it, I think that it's more like humans, everybody has different hair color, different body shapes, different things like that. But like one thing about the description of Sasquatch is that Sasquatch is a global thing, which I'll talk about more about that here in a minute. But with it being a global thing, not just in the US or not just in Canada, but globally, the description follows no matter what country that you go to. There may be differences, height differences, maybe body shape differences, but it's basically going to be the same thing. It's going to be a muscular, upright, kind of ape human cross that's hairy. That's the most, that kind of covers anywhere you go. That's going to be the basic description. Where is Sasquatch? Well, Sasquatch sightings span over 60 countries globally. It's on 6 of the 7 continents. The only continent that I don't think has any reported activity would be Antarctica. And there very well could be activity there. There's just nobody there to see it. So it's not just a United States and Canada type thing. It is globally. And globally, there are different names for it. Australia, they call it the Yowie. I think it's China, it's the Yeren. Here in the US, it's Bigfoot or Sasquatch or the Grassman or, No Necks. There lots of different names, but all of them pretty much pertain to the same type of being. And it's kind of interesting when you get into it that all of these beings are seen all throughout the world, and they all pretty much fit into the same description that we just talked about. The next thing I want to talk about is how old is Sasquatch? And, that's something that is really hard to lay down. There's really no way of putting a date on it. How old is Sasquatch? There's pictographs that depict Sasquatch-like beings that are thousands of years old. We have the Patterson and Gimlin film from the 1960s, 1967. You have all these different accounts throughout time. And, it's really hard to say, Sasquatch has been here this long. Everybody says fossils. Why don't we find any fossils of Bigfoot? And with that being said, that would be the perfect thing to date a being like Sasquatch. But, I can take a known species, a chimpanzee, and as far as I know, there's only like 1 jawbone and 3 teeth of a fossilized chimpanzee that's ever been found. And they don't even know if the teeth match the jawbone or if it was a different individual. So really trying to figure out how long it's been around is, it's hard to nail down. Like I said, we've got pictographs that go back thousands of years. We've got recent sightings. We've got sightings from 1967, we have sightings from the 1700s, the 1600s, the 1500s, all the way back. So, there's really no way of aging how old the Sasquatch phenomena is. But when you think about it, it's been around just probably about as long as people have been around to talk about it. Let's see here. Mark Marcel says there are indigenous basket weavings in the Pacific Northwest that depict an individual that is larger than a human with very little neck, wide shoulders, and small hips. Yeah, it's, like I said, every indigenous tribe, as far as I know, every indigenous tribe in the United States has a name for it. I guess too, when you think about it, every indigenous population throughout the world probably has a name for it. And like I said, this is something it has probably been around as long as man has, if not longer. And I think we've lived with it, as long as there's been humans on the planet. What evidence do we have? And this is going to make some of you guys mad, and that's not something that I'm trying to do is make anybody mad. But what evidence do we have? Well, we have hair samples, we have DNA, we have fecal samples, handprints, footprints, video, audio recording. When it comes to evidence, there is a good amount of evidence out there. But unfortunately, most of the evidence that we have is circumstantial. You might have a hair that matches up the description that we have of a Sasquatch hair. Long tapered, it's never been cut, multiple colors, no medulla. I think I said that right, medulla. There's no center structure in the hair, and it may even come back as unknown primate. But with that being listed as unknown, that's not really a definitive answer. It's getting closer, but it's not a definitive answer. And it's the same way with DNA. Footprints, man, there is piles and piles of footprints. I have found footprints. I think just about everybody that's done any research has found footprints. And that's something too, unless we have a good, like a Patterson and Gimlin type situation where you have video and, footprint evidence to back it up, we really don't know what's caused them. Same thing with handprints. Audio, man, I tell you what, there's a lot of good audio. Lots and lots of good audio out there. And audio is the same thing too. Audio is great. You can put it on a spectrograph and show that it's using tones that are out of human range, but it still doesn't quite come back and tell us exactly what it is. So our evidence that we collect individually is not compelling. But when we combine the evidence together, which is something that, I think all Sasquatch groups should try to work better together to bring this evidence together. So if we bring all of our evidence together, hair samples, DNA samples, footprints, handprints, video, audio, whatever we have, it will bring things closer together. Now, with that being said, too, you have to use your own judgment. I cannot tell you guys what to believe because I have a hard time on my own sometimes trying to figure out what to believe. There are so many things now that are on the internet. AI is going to be a killer. The videos, a lot of them, there's subtle mistakes, but they're getting better and better and better with each new video that comes out. It's going to be hard to prove anything with video. Audio the same way. Audio is great, but you don't really know what's doing it. My advice, and like I said, is I can't tell you guys what to believe. because that goes against kind of my own code. I'm not going to take what you say for granted, and I don't want anybody to take what I say for granted. So I'm not going to push an agenda on anybody. But you kind of have to use your own, I guess, your own evidence-based practices and your own common sense and things like that when it comes to looking at this evidence to try to figure out what it is. And it's has happened to a lot of us too. Everything that we find in the woods is not direct evidence of Sasquatch. We may find footprints that look good and cast them, and they're human. And once we get them looked at, then they come back and say, "Oh yeah, that's a human print." Well, a lot of people will get discouraged with that, but there's no reason to be, because you did exactly what you were supposed to do. You found it, you casted it, you had an expert look at it, and it come back to be this. That's not a failure, that's a step in the right direction, because you're following protocols to get evidence looked at properly. And that's a big thing with evidence. A lot of the evidence that gets collected gets hoarded. People say, "Oh, I've got all kinds of hair. I'm not going to let anybody have none of it." I've got all kinds of DNA proof. I'm not going to let anybody have any of it. Well, why not? It needs to be checked. It needs to be evaluated. It needs to be looked at. Especially the hair samples and the DNA and the footprints and the audio. It all needs to be sent to somebody that's an expert in that field. Find somebody that can put it on a spectrograph and see if it is outside of the range of human voice. Have the DNA checked and see if it comes back to a known species. Have the hairs checked to see if it comes back to a known species. Have the footprints checked. See if it comes back as, a lot of tracks that get casted might be a bear track. Sometimes a bear will put its front foot down and its back foot falls in almost the same place, and it makes a really large print that looks like a Bigfoot track. So if we get this evidence collected and looked at, we're moving in the right directions instead of just collecting it and doing nothing with it. That really does not advance the study of what we're trying to do. The next thing I want to talk about is sightings. Science has long said that Sasquatch is a hoax or a misidentified animal. And I will say that they are a lot of hoaxes out there, as far as, somebody dressing up in a Bigfoot. And I don't know why anybody would want to do it, dressing up in a Sasquatch suit and running through the woods. To me, that sounds like a good way of getting shot. But misidentifications of other animals, I'm sure there are instances of misidentification. It's the same way with everything. Anything can be misidentified. But there are so many sighting reports that are credible by credible people that when they give their report, it makes sense. Everything falls into place. You get the description, the locomotion, the way it moves, things like that. That's some of the things that I look for in video evidence and personal evidence when somebody's actually giving me a report. Is I listen to the description of how it walked. Based on my own sighting and things that I have seen, like Patterson Gimlin film, Sasquatch has a really unique gait. As far as it being human-like, the only thing that I believe that makes it human-like is that it is upright and on 2 feet. Everything other than that is vastly different. It walks with a bent knee, and it's kind of stooped forward gait. Now, that's a really uncomfortable gait for a person to be doing. I always say, if you think you can walk like Bigfoot, stand up, bend your knees, lean forward, and walk from your couch to your refrigerator and feel what your legs feel like. You're going to know that there's a difference. So that's one of the things that I look for, is what type of gait it has. especially on video evidence. You kind of got to look for that. So, even when people are giving you their reports, another thing too, from like a sighting report, when people are giving you their reports, they are giving you their perception of what they saw. You weren't there. I wasn't there. Just the people that had the sighting were there. So they are giving you their perception of what they saw. Now, it may not always be accurate, but it is still their perception. That is what they believe that they saw. So that's always important, especially when you're dealing with witnesses. Don't go in gung ho. I've heard a lot of researchers say if they mention anything about the woo, the interview is over. Well, that's maybe not necessarily the right way of doing things. I think we need to hear everybody out and see how things are going to progress from that point. I might be able to describe something that somebody had in a sighting that they think was paranormal in association with Sasquatch. And I might be able to, use a little bit of science and explain that. I've had some very odd things happen on research trips that I haven't been able to explain, but I cannot directly relate that to Sasquatch. So keeping that in mind, when it comes to the sightings, we need to take everything that everybody says to heart. That's what they saw. That was their perception of what they saw. Whether you think it's right or wrong, that was their perception of it. I think we need to take that and take a deeper dive into the information that they give us from their sightings. The next thing is not all researchers or research groups are honest or reputable. There are a lot of hoaxes and a lot of misinformation out there. For anybody that's new in the Sasquatch community, my best advice is to seek out a group of people that are honest and really reputable people. And it's not that hard. I mean, for the most part, we're all adults. Okay, it's not that hard to kind of figure out who is reputable, who's hoax and who's lying. It's not that hard to figure it out. It doesn't hurt to check different groups to see what they're doing. One thing that I always tried to avoid, and when I first got into the subject, I had some really good teachers, and they told me, don't circle anything in a photo in red. We've all seen those photos that's got 25 circles, and this is a Bigfoot, this is a Bigfoot, this is a Bigfoot, this is a Bigfoot, this is a Bigfoot. I kind of get a little leery of those, and you see them quite a bit. When I had my sighting, I saw one. Some people say that they always travel in twos. Very believable. I can fully go with that. A photo that has 25 circles in it, I have a hard time, seeing that. Now, that was someone's perception. They think that they saw that. I'm not going to come out right and tell somebody that gives me a picture that's got 25 red circles on it and say, hey, you're lying, dude. But it's harder to believe. I've seen photos of a tree burl. A burl is like a big knot that grows on a tree from like some type of damage or some type of infection that it's had. And the wood grows in crazy different directions. It's really quite popular as far as furniture goes, or they use it a lot in designer cars as accent wood in there. It's really high value. And I've seen pictures of wood burls on a tree, and I say, that's a Bigfoot that's wrapped around the tree. So you kind of have to take it all as it comes. And just, that's one of the things too. I can't tell you what to believe, what to expect, what to do. You kind of have to do that on your own. But if you do not feel comfortable in a group or with a certain researcher, there's no shame in, stepping back and stepping away. And I think a lot of us kind of get hung up in this where, you know, if you don't necessarily agree with what somebody says, there's no shame in just stepping away. A lot of us automatically go to this finger pointing and yelling and stuff, but I don't necessarily believe that's the best thing to do. I think we should all take a step back, look at what we have going on, and go with it from there. Uh, this is probably the most important one. You are not alone. There are people from all over the world, all walks of life, that have encountered Sasquatch. They've seen it, they've heard it, they've had odd things happen. And it's when I say people from all walks of life, we have former presidents. Theodore Roosevelt had an encounter. Daniel Boone has had an encounter. Actresses, actors. Rob Lowe had encounters. Les Stroud, the Survivor Man, like one of my personal favorite celebrities. Les Stroud is no joke. He's had encounters. So we've had everybody from presidents to loggers that have had sightings and experiences. You are not alone. Don't ever feel alone and think that, I can't talk about this because people are going to ridicule me. People are going to talk bad about me. People are going to slander my character or whatever. This is going to affect, my job, my life, whatever. It's sad, but there are a lot of people that will not talk about Bigfoot because they're afraid of the ridicule that goes along with it. I've never had that problem. If people are talking bad about me, they're probably just letting somebody else rest, so it doesn't bother me. I know what I saw. I know what I've experienced. I've tried to explain it away, and I can't. So believe in yourself. There's a lot more people out there than just you that are dealing with this. Next thing, how dangerous is Sasquatch? I think, and this is me, my experience, my thoughts. I think that depends on who you ask and where you are when you ask. Some people report dangerous encounters. You have like the Rock Canyon incident. You have all these different, like the missing 411. I don't necessarily believe that everybody that goes missing in these national forests and things is a victim of Sasquatch. I think there's a small percentage that are, but it's not all of them. You have all these reports of like close personal bonds with Sasquatch also, from like habituation sites where people leave food out and things like that. And, I prefer to err on the side of caution, especially when it comes to like habituation sites and things like that. Mainly because you're dealing with, a 7 to a 10 foot tall, 800 to 1,200 pound being. And it appears to have a great level of strength from everything that we've seen. So that, that in itself, I think should err on the side of caution. When you think about it, people go out and they try to habituate large predators, black bears, grizzly bears, things like that. And I cannot remember the guy's name, but he was the grizzly man or something like that. And his passion in life was to study the North American brown bear. and he interacted with them. He got close with them. He thought that, with this personal relationship that he had with them, things like that, that he was safe, but he eventually ended up being killed and consumed by these grizzly bears. So I always say err on the side of caution. And two, like I said, there's still lots of reports from people that have these, really nice encounters with it. Let's see what Mike Nations has put up here. Mike says there are no reports of any Bigfoot hunting anybody, and if there is, the government's going to keep it hush hush, so you can't prove it either, or that's the problem. Yeah, I think like some of the 411, the missing 411, I think there is a percentage, Mike. I really do. I think it's a small percentage. I think a lot of times what happens to those people in those parks is dehydration and things like that. Maybe even some weather type incidents, hypothermia and things like that. And then, it goes the same too with the summertime. You have people out there that go into hypothermia, where they get too hot, have heat strokes and things like that. So I think that kind of leads into it a lot as to what might be happening to some of them. And then there's always, the same cases. You could have other predators out there that has taken some on: mountain lions, black bears, grizzly bears. We're getting a large population of wolves built up in the United States. It could be any number of things like that. Snake bite. A snake bite can take you out pretty quick, especially if you panic. So with all that being said, I think there's a lot of other things out there that are causing a lot of these hikers and things to disappear. I don't really know that I have ever read any reports of Sasquatch hunting somebody. I've read lots of reports about Sasquatch paralleling somebody. And I think that might be, another form of like passive aggressive aggression, where they're trying to move you from one spot to the other, maybe to get you away from a birthing area, get you away from the young, get you away from, a bedding area or something like that. That's not uncommon in the animal world for animals to do things like that, to try to move a predator or something that they think is harmful away from, its young, its nest, whatever. So with that being said, we're about the halfway point here. And Billy has made us up a song. So we're going to go ahead and play our song for this evening.
Deep in the pines of the great Northwest, where the fog hangs heavy on the mountain's chest, there's a name they whisper in the Halcomelon tongue, a story as old as when the world was young. He's 7 feet of shadow in a coat of matted hair, a 900-pound beast breathing cold mountain air, while the city folks are sleeping in their neon light. He's the undisputed king of the Cascades night. He's a Sasquatch, a shadow, the master of the hide, with a mid-tarsal break and a heavy timber stride. Some call him a relic of a giant Asian ape. Some say he's a spirit in a biological shape, but the wood knocks are ringing through the cedar and the clay, and the Patterson film hasn't withered away. Now the skeptics in the lab, they want a body on the slab. They say it's just a grizzly or a prankster's gift of gab. They talk about the DNA and the samples that they find, just to tell us it's a bison or a black bear's behind. But Dr. Meldrum's looking at the ridges on a cast screen. There's a primate that's a phantom from the past. If you hear a high-pitched whistle or a scream across a ridge, you'll know you've crossed the border on a prehistoric bridge. He's a Sasquatch, a shadow, the master of the hide, with a mid-tarsal break and a heavy timber stride. Some call him a relic of a giant Asian ape. Some say he's a spirit in a biological shape, but the wood knocks are ringing through the cedar and the clay, and the Patterson film hasn't withered away. In a world that's all mapped out, where the satellites see all, there's a comfort in the mystery of a wild man standing tall. Maybe he's interdimensional, maybe he's just smart, but he's living in the silence of the American heart. Ready and your campfire burning low. There's things in these canyons that the textbooks don't know. Just a blur on a sandbar, a footprint in the mud. He's got the DNA of legends running through his blood. Yeah, he's out there, still walking, still hiding.
All right, that's pretty good. I like that one. I kind of like them kind of backwoods country songs. That's always my favorites. If you guys have anything you want to discuss as far as, you know, what we know about Sasquatch, what you want to talk about, post, ask questions, make comments, come up with subjects you want to talk about, that's fine. Tonight it's just me and you guys, and if I end up doing all the talking, it's pretty boring. So the next thing I want to talk about is things that we know about Sasquatch is vocalizations. We hear a lot of different types of vocalizations. You know, we'll jump right into probably the biggest ones, which is the Sierra sounds. We have the samurai chatter and all these other things that go into place. We have howls like the Ohio howl, whistles, clicking noises, metal sound, animal calls that aren't necessarily 100% accurate. Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever you want to call it, has an incredible ability as a mimic. And it has a really incredible intelligence level. And with that being said, communication can be verbal, it could be vocal, it could be nonverbal by using knocks, tree knocks, rock clacks, things like that. We have so many sounds that are associated with the phenomena of Sasquatch that it's hard to kind kind of corral them into a group. Like I said, with the Sierra sounds, I've listened to the Sierra sounds a lot, probably more than I should have. But at one point in the Sierra sounds, you can hear Ron Moorhead. He tries to repeat the call that they just made. So they make the call, Ron repeats it, and then you can hear laughter. So whatever we're dealing with has a high enough sense of itself that it finds humor in things. Now, everybody's going to say, well, how does that, play in with people that believe it's an animal? Listen, if you've ever been on the farm and been around donkeys, if you slip and fall or something like that, that a donkey will laugh at you. Okay? It's not out of the realm of possibilities. But another part in the Sierra sounds too is that I hear what I think is Bigfoot trying to mimic some of the language that it's heard from those men at that hunting camp. And I think I hear Sasquatch, kind of like in a proto English, say, "What the F?" And everybody's like, "Are you sure you hear that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's pretty much what it sounds like." So, that being said, there's so much as far as vocalizations and audio and things that are out there. We kind of have to use our own common sense. Whistling, things like that. Can a human whistle? Yes. What is the likelihood of it being 3 o'clock in the morning? You're out in the middle of the pitch black forest. There's nobody around for miles, and something whistles at you. Birds are not world famous for making calls at night. There's only a few species of birds that will make calls at night. So this whistling thing, that's really, really hard to nail down. It's intriguing. What would make an animal whistle like that? And a whistle would not be like a long distance communication. It's something close range because it's not extremely loud. And then when it does come to the longer distance communications, you have like tree knocks, rock clacks, and things like that go on. It's undeniable that all these sounds are coming from something. What else in the woods has hands and thumbs to pick up two rocks and clack them together, or to pick up a stick and bang it against a tree? Now, with that being said, too, every rock click that you hear in the woods is not necessarily Bigfoot, and every tree knock that you hear in the woods might not necessarily be Bigfoot. But if you have repetitive, that's the scientific method. If it's repeatable, if it happens over and over, then that kind of brings it into the realm of this is, something that they do. And, you hear all kinds of reports of wood knocks, rock clacks, long distance howls like the Ohio howl, the samurai chatter. And the Ohio howl is heard all throughout the U.S. It's not just in Ohio. I think that was just the first place that it was captured. It's the same thing with the samurai chatter. The samurai chatter was first recorded in the Sierras, but still yet that same type of samurai chatter is heard all over. It's not just there. It's all over. It's being heard in places like Washington State, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, Kentucky. So with all these things, playing a part in it, this is, a really, it's hard to explain. It's a really hard science to get into the vocalizations. The vocalizations need to be recorded, and then they need to be run through like a spectrograph to see where the tone is, what the volume is. If it's above what a human can do or if it's below what a human can do. That way it rules out any any possibilities. And I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. I've heard howls that, just say it. I didn't need to put it on a spectrograph. Okay. I knew there wasn't somebody out there howling like that. And it's pretty, I'm going to be honest with you. We had one howl on a research expedition one time that it was super loud and it was long. I mean, it was real long. And it kind of shook me enough that I stuck my hand down in my pocket and I got a good grip on my pistol just in case something come out of that woods. I was not going to go out easy. Mike's put something up here. Let's see what Mike has to say. Said, I do believe they can do sounds above and below what we can hear, like almost what dogs. Yeah, I believe you're correct, Mike. I really do. One common thing that gets brought up a whole lot is infrasound and, the effects that infrasound has. Infrasound is a wavelength that's below humans. It's below human hearing. A lot of large animals use infrasound. Elephants, big cats, things like that. They use infrasound for like hunting. Elephants use it for long distance communication. And infrasound can alter animals to the point that they might freeze. That's the reason big cats use it as a hunting strategy. And people have reported having infrasound encounters, being disoriented, kind of like almost like paranormal type stuff that happens to them. But infrasound is a really interesting thing. I do kind of believe that Sasquatch Bigfoot probably uses it. I don't think it is as directable as a lot of people say. Some people say, oh, I got zapped. I think it's kind of a broad spectrum. They just kind of transmit it. And I think you have to be susceptible to it. I don't think necessarily I'm susceptible to it because, I'm a military veteran and I have a lot of hearing loss. I have tinnitus, which is the constant ringing in my ear. And I don't think that I would be as susceptible to it as somebody who is younger and hasn't had the trauma to their inner ear like I have. So I think they could probably be more susceptible to it. And, I think it all depends too a lot on the person. I'm not going to say it was infrasound, but I have been like in areas where there's been calls made and you can like kind of feel your insides moving. Now, I don't know if that was a volume thing. I don't know if it was infrasound, or I don't know if maybe I was just kind of scared and was shaking. I don't know. I can't really nail that one down, but it's kind of interesting the different vocalizations that we do get. And it's another thing too, like I said, they are repeatable. You have reports of these vocalizations all over. And on the subject of being mimics, there are lots of people and several people that we've interviewed here on the show that have had their name or something like that called to them. One guy said he heard his mom calling him, but his mom was sitting right beside of him. So that wasn't his mother hollering, but it sounded like his mother. So the mimic thing, I think, is really, really up there. It's a real possibility. There are people that can mimic animal sounds. And I think, probably Sasquatch can mimic humans. So especially if it's something that they hear all the time. And I think a lot of times when it comes to, somebody hearing their name called, it's an instance where the Sasquatch hears that quite often. Like somebody comes home and hollers for their wife. We had a guest on a little while back, Sarah Brown. She has heard her name called from the woods. Really different. That brings up some different emotions. I think that's kind of scary when you think about it, but that just lends into the ability that they have to mimic. I heard an owl one time that it was wrong. It was something trying to mimic an owl, but it was too deep. If this was an owl, it was the biggest owl I've ever heard of. That owl would have been about 5 foot tall, 6 foot tall. So it tried to mimic an owl, but it was off. And I think anything that tries to mimic something, sometimes you nail it and sometimes you're going to be a little off. And that time in particular, it was off. And it was, once you heard it, it was one of them sounds where you're like, I'm not going up there. I'm not going to go see what that is. It can be a little bit unnerving. And last subject I want to bring up tonight is what do we really know about Sasquatch? And I'm going to hurt some feelings here again too, and I don't really want to, but what do we really know about Sasquatch? Probably not as much as I would like to know. Some people will say nothing. We know absolutely nothing about it. And that's, I can't necessarily argue that point that we don't really know anything about it. We're all using our own perspective. We're all trying to prove it, but it hasn't been proven yet. Like I said, some people say, we don't know anything about it at all, and I can't really argue with that. The evidence to date has been really circumstantial. We've had lots of things like the Patterson-Gimlin film. Patterson-Gimlin film, in my opinion, is a factual video that Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin captured in October of 1967 in Bluff Creek of a Sasquatch walking up that riverbank, creek bank, whatever you want to call it. I believe it's real, but that's been around since 1967, and it has still to this day not been proven to be a hoax and not been proven to be 100% authentic. So that really leaves it out there. It's can't be proven as a hoax. It can't be proven as real. I think it's real. That's my own opinion. There's several videos out there that I think is real, and sometimes people agree with me, sometimes people disagree with me. That's fine. We're all adults. We can all have that conversation. But, with it not being able to be proven as a hoax, even if they still won't come out and say that it's real, if they can't prove that it's a hoax, that lends credibility to the subject. Where does all this leave us at? It really comes to say that the evidence that we have, that we've collected as a group wholly, doesn't really amount to much. And I say that kind of with a lot of pain, really, because a lot of work has been put into this. I put a lot of work into it myself, and we've reaped very little reward. Have we had hair samples that have been out there that comes back to unknown primate? Yes, we have. We've had DNA samples that come back unknown. Yes, we have. Footprint casts the same way. Handprints, same way. My thoughts on it are that each of us needs to take the evidence that we have and take that extra step. Take it to some type of scientist, somebody that specializes in that field, specializes in hair samples, specializes in footprints, specializes in DNA, things like that, and get that looked at. even if it does come back as unidentified, that's a step in the right direction. If we get enough samples of something that is unidentified, it will set up a baseline. Once we have the baseline, then scientifically we can move forward with it. We can take that baseline and step up to the next level, actually get things proven. Okay, you might have all these unidentifieds that match. The DNA sequence matches. All right, now you have all these unidentifieds that match. They're all sequenced together. Now you get a video with the DNA collection of a Sasquatch moving, whatever. You got the video, you got the DNA collection at the site where the video took place at. You have the footprints, whatever. You send that in and it comes back as unidentified, but it matches this bar. That's the step we're looking for. We're looking for something that can take all these unidentifieds and tie them to one thing. This is what it is, this one thing. And a lot of people will say that the DNA science is not there yet. I'm just going to say, I think it is. I think it was the Yeti project, and they found some hair during the Yeti project and had it analyzed, and it come back as a known species. But that species that it matched was a species that supposedly died out 10,000 years ago. It was an extinct divergent species of brown bear that later became polar bears. So with that being said, the possibility is that up in the Himalayas where people might be seeing the Yeti, there's also an extinct species of divergent brown bear running around. So, when you get these samples out there and get them tested, it's incredible what you can get back. And like I said, even the unidentifieds are helpful, because once you get enough unidentifieds that match, then we have a baseline that we can work from. But until we can get, everybody on board with ethical research, reliable research, and really crack down on the AI hoaxing and just hoaxing in general, nothing hurts a subject worse than somebody trying to, make up something that really puts a crippling hold on all of the research that we all do. It kind of takes honest research and knocks it down. It's hard to get mainstream scientists on board anyway, because there is so much hoaxing and, things like that go on. These scientists don't want to put their livelihoods or anything like that on the line based on just what, evidence is out there, because a lot of it has been hoaxed. So, with that in mind, as a community together, if we want to push this evidence forward, we really want to know about Sasquatch, then we need to be ethical about the way that we do things. We need to have chains of custody. Take your evidence, move it forward, get it to some science in that field of whatever type of evidence that you had, whether it's footprints, hair samples, DNA samples, whatever. Get it to that expert. Keep a track of who has had their hands on that. Get it to an expert. Store it properly. I'm guilty of that for years. I carried sandwich bags in a backpack. That way, if I found any hairs or anything, I'd just drop them in there. And that's the worst possible way of taking care of them. And I know that now. But then I didn't. So, pass on good information to our fellow researchers. If we all work together and kind of bring all of our evidence together, I think the answer to what do we really know about Sasquatch will one day in the future be a whole lot closer. With that being said, guys, we've been on here about an hour, I went over about everything that I wanted to. I greatly appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight. Jeffrey Vallet, thank you for the like. If you guys are interested in the subject of Sasquatch, David Wiegert here, hang on. What do you put a hair sample in? Paper bags is what I have found out now. A plastic Ziploc bag, David, will cause the DNA that's on that hair to rapidly degrade. Paper bag, paper envelope, there you go, Mike, paper envelope, something like that. Another thing, too, about hair samples, David, if you are going to collect hair samples, use something like sterile tongs to pick it up. Wear gloves, something like that. Make sure that you're not cross-contaminating the sample that you're picking up. Make sure that, whatever, like I said, the sterile tweezers, wear gloves, things like that. Anything that you can do to protect that sample from being cross-contaminated is another step forward. A lot of the evidence that we gets kicked out because, science says it's cross-contaminated. It has human DNA in it, which, that's another thing too. In my own opinion, I don't necessarily think that that's too far out of the realm of possibility. There's lots of Native American stories of Sasquatch taking Native women and breeding with them and having viable offspring. So that's a very real possibility that Sasquatch could be part human. Or it could be close enough to humans that its DNA might be mistaken as human. So, like I said, anything that we can do as far as collection, clean collection, takes the evidence to the next step. And that doesn't necessarily just go with hair samples. It could be fecal samples. It could be like you find an apple with a bite taken out of it. Anything that you can do to protect what DNA that's there would be wonderful. I'm open. If there's any more questions, guys, go ahead and throw them up and we'll talk about them. We'll give it just a minute and see if we get any more. Okay. Looks like everybody's fairly satisfied. So, like I said, I really appreciate you guys being on tonight. It's a different show, just me talking. So, I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate the likes. If you're interested in the subject of Sasquatch, or if you know anybody that's interested in the subject of Sasquatch, like, share, subscribe, tell people about it. I think this is a really good podcast. And what I do is not for me, it's for you guys. That way we can pass along information to you guys. And I try to get good information. I try to pass along what I think is important in the field to you guys. So with that being said, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your week. Snowing in a lot of states right now. Personally, we're getting hammered pretty good down here right now. So everybody be careful, stay safe, stay warm. Tune in next week. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Sasquatch Watch Radio. We are incredibly grateful for our community. Because of you, we've surpassed 6,700 subscribers and continue to grow every day. Our mission here at SWR is simple: to provide a platform for honest, down-to-earth discussions about Bigfoot, free from drama and ridicule. If you've enjoyed the show, please help us spread the word. If you're interested in being a guest, you can reach us via our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, or by emailing us at sasquatchwatchradio@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to access our full archive dating back to 2008 and to stay updated on all upcoming episodes. If you've had a sighting or an encounter you'd like to report, let us know. We have a network of researchers across the United States ready to assist. You can now find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Rumble. Please leave us a comment and let us know what topics you'd like to hear next. We'll see you next Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Until then, keep on squatching.